The Media Center for Art Education and Technology, a service of the Monterey County Office of Education, along with the Herald Live, presents PrepNation. Now to your hosts, Dave Kellogg and John Devine.
Welcome to PrepNation. I'm Dave Kellogg alongside John Devine. We head into the second half of the season with a battle of undefeateds this weekend, and that's Monte Vista Christian against Seaside, both teams 5-0. John, you were telling me that this is becoming quite a rivalry between these two teams.
And it is, and Coach Avon and I talked about this earlier today. I mean, the fact in 2009, when Seaside won the CCS title, they hung on to beat Monte Vista 10-0. The year after that, they struggled and had to come from behind to win, and then, of course, last year, Monte Vista beat them on their way to their first title. So the one thing Avila told me earlier today is this is a team that actually matches up with them.
You know, I was surprised because at the beginning of the season I was thinking these two teams aren't going to be undefeated coming into this game. I mean, Seaside I could see losing to Palma, but they had the big victory there. But you were telling me Monte Vista lost 15 players to graduation, including their Division I quarterback who walked on at Arizona.
Correct.
How have they done it this year? How have they become undefeated?
You know, they're doing it similar to how they did it last year. They're throwing the ball a little bit with one significant difference. I think they've got a running back who transferred over from Palma named Cody Washington. Wasn't going to get a lot of playing time at Palma, but at Monte Vista he's got over 500 yards in 5 games. He's given them a little more of a dimension. I think it's helped that passing game a little bit more. And I talked to their head coach last year, and he told me, hey John, this isn't a one-year thing. We want to keep this going at Monte Vista, and that's exactly what he's done. This is the third straight year they've started 5-0.
And so they're running the ball more this year, which forces teams to defend them both against the run and the pass.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's clear that, again, they're not one-dimensional. I think the thing that makes them a little more effective maybe than last year is they are able to run the ball. They've got 2 guys that are on pace for 1,000 yards.
Well, let's hear what Seaside coach Al Avila says about defending against Monte Vista.
Monte Vista is a very well-coached team, and I think they were surprised the area, but not to us. As a matter of fact, at the beginning of the year, we had said that they're the dark horse team, and we saw them in 707 in the Jamboree, and we said, these guys are the real deal. And we knew that they would be probably one of the top teams in our league.
Al, is this starting to become a rivalry? And I say that because you go back to 2009, the year you guys won the CCS title, you hung on for a 10-0 win. Then in 2010, you had to come from behind to beat them up there. And of course, last year they beat you to win their first ever league title. Is it a rivalry now?
Yeah, I think it's a rivalry that we know that when we play them, it's going to be a good game. They always play us tough, and I know that they've said in the past that they always mark that, they circle that game at the beginning of the year. Right. So our kids know that when we play them, it's going to be a real good game.
And is Monte Vista one of those teams that just matches up with Seaside real well?
Well, they match up better than most teams just because they're athletic. They do what we do. They have good athletes, and so they put them on our athletes. So it's really our athletes against our athletes, and then see what I think the game's going to be won in the trenches. To be honest with you, even though we both have good athletes, but they definitely match up good to us.
Right. Now you're out of school this week for the fall break, so the schedule changes a little bit. Is that a coaching nightmare?
It is in the fact that getting the kids here, keeping them motivated. They have to sleep in late, but I tell you, we've had a good week of practice this week. But that's always the hard part, and make sure that they're focused and that we have good practices.
What have you done maybe to try and keep it as normal as possible?
We try to usually start at the same time, but we start early. But we just do our same routine as far as lifting weights, practicing, same Monday, Tuesday practice, and so the kids feel that the time structure is the same, and we do pretty much the same stuff as far as our individuals and all that. So it goes about the same.
Now, Monte Vista last year won their first ever league title. Started the year against 7-0, something like that. This year, they're 5-0. Third straight year, they're 5-0. So last year wasn't a fluke, was it?
No. As a matter of fact, 2 years when we played them, they were undefeated. I think we were the first one to beat them then. It don't surprise me that they're undefeated at all. And we sort of saw this coming when we played them. And so we thought maybe we could have 1 or 2 losses and they would be undefeated when we played them. And we're just lucky that we're undefeated.
Right. Now, for as much as we talk about your offense, and justifiably so, averaging 48-plus points a game, your defense this year has been flat out nasty, and that's something we haven't seen in the last 2 years.
Right, it looks like the old Seaside, and a lot of it's because of our linebacker, our 3 linebackers. I'll say this straight up. I don't think anybody's got better 3 linebackers than us. Our 2 D linemen, John and Simi, are unbelievable, and our defensive end, Tino, has been a terror at defensive end. So that's one of the main reasons why we've been playing so good.
So you mentioned it'll probably be decided in the trenches on Friday. But will defense dictate this game?
Definitely, because they're a high-tempo offense. We're a high-tempo offense. We both like to spread it out, run the ball. So whoever dominates those trenches puts pressure on each other's quarterback, be able to control the clock. That's going to decide the game.
Thanks, Al.
Thank you.
John, are you surprised that Monte Vista is 5-0?
No, I'm not, and I'll tell you why. And again, this is not to discount anything they've done, but they really haven't played anybody this year. A lot of the teams they've played are struggling right now, and part of that has to do with Monte Vista. They've gone out and beaten these teams. I mean, they're averaging 51.2 points a game. In fact, I said earlier this week that I thought maybe Seaside and Monte Vista belonged in the Gatlin division instead of the Pacific.
The upper division.
Correct. That being said, I mean, this will be their first test that they're going to face in terms of a team that's, a title contender. I mean, Seaside's a little more battle tested, having already faced Palma and beaten them, and having faced Soquel, who was undefeated at the time. So I'm curious to see what Monte Vista looks like against a really good team.
Can they put up those kind of points against the Seaside defense?
I don't think so. I think Soquel thought they were going to put up a lot of points against Seaside, and they didn't do it. This Seaside defense, as Al Alva likes to call it, is nasty. And this is the first time they've had this type of defense in 2 years. Samson Tonga, kind of one of the leaders on that team. I mean, they shut opponents down. They're physical. They're staying in their assignments this year. I mean, they're just a different defense than what they were. And part of that has to do with the fact that 7 of these guys were sophomores last year on this team. Now they're juniors. That's a big difference.
Yeah. Well, let's hear what Samson Tonga has to say about Monte Vista Christian.
All right, Samson, tell me about this hair.
Well,
all this hair back here. Look at this.
Well, I feel like the hair is just some part of my personality, and I don't know, it gives me a mystique on the field.
When's the last time you cut it?
I cut it my freshman year, and haven't cut it since.
Wow. Now, Joseph cut his hair last year at the end of football season. Any chance we could see you cutting your hair at the end of this year, particularly if you win a CCS title or maybe a state title?
Not a chance.
All right, on the football, Samson, this defense, why is it different than last year? I mean, because essentially it's the same personnel.
I just feel like we're more hungry, and we worked harder than last year, and we really buckled down and got some really bond with each other and create a really good defense.
Yeah, obviously, with a couple of shutouts like that, you've kind of become the leader of this unit. Is that something you welcomed or expected when the year started?
I didn't expect it at first, but I just took on the role and felt like someone had to step up.
Yeah. Now, looking at Monte Vista, what has impressed you about them, other than the fact that they're averaging 51 points a game?
I like their high-tempo offense. It's really caught my eye, and I feel like they're similar to our offense, and it'd be a good matchup.
No doubt, yeah. Now, last year, this team missed the playoffs for the first time in 8 years. Does that still burn a little bit inside you, and does it keep you humble even though you're off to a 5-0 start this year?
I feel like it's kept us humble, and missing the playoffs last year has really started a hunger in us, and we're still hungry to keep on.
Now, we've talked about the offenses of both teams this year, but you're a defensive guy. Is defense going to dictate this tempo tonight on Friday?
I feel like defense will play a major role in the game.
All right. Thanks, Samson.
Thank you.
Bottom line, John, what happens Friday night?
I think Seaside wins this game. Again, I'm going to go back to the fact that I think Seaside's a little more battle-tested, having faced Palma and Soquel. And I know we're hyping this game up. I don't know if it's as big of a deal as when Palma and Seaside played 3 weeks ago, but it is a big deal to Monte Vista. They have had Seaside's number in the past. I just think Seaside's got a little better defense. I think they're a little stronger, a little more seasoned, and I think that's going to come into play toward the end, probably in the second half. Hey, Dave, I wanted to mention one other thing about Seaside. They got a female on this team, Aaliyah Lopez. She has scored 2 touchdowns this year. First known female in the state of California to score 2 touchdowns in the same season.
Okay, and you talked to her this afternoon.
I did, yeah.
Let's hear what Aaliyah Lopez has to say about playing varsity football for Seaside.
All right, Aaliyah, I want to know, what possessed you to want to play football?
Well, since I was little, I've watched my sisters cheer for the Seaside Raiders, and watching them cheer is but then I wanted to be the one that was out on the field hitting people. So I convinced my mom to let me go out and play. So from there, it was just I don't know, love for the game.
Well, what did your parents think, though, when you said, I want to play football? They said, no way? I mean, what did it take to convince them to say, okay, you go out there and put some pads on?
My mom didn't like it so much. Neither did my dad. They were scared for me to get hurt. And, I guess after the first game that I played for the Raiders, it was just...
So you've been doing this for a while, not just this year?
Yeah, I've been doing it for...
Forever.
Yeah. It feels like forever, but...
How do the guys take you on the team like that? I know it's a family atmosphere here at Seaside, but, I mean, have they embraced you?
My brothers are my brothers. They are literally family to me. I've been playing with them since I was young, growing up with them, just knowing them, getting to know them. I don't know, like, they just accept me for who I am. They treat me like a sister, no different from a player. But
Yeah. Describe to me that feeling when you scored that first touchdown a month ago against Jefferson.
I had no feeling. Like, it just happened. It didn't hit me until the morning after
Really?
I woke up, and I was just like, wow, I actually scored a touchdown for varsity football.
Now, you've actually scored 2, haven't scored one last week against Pajaro Valley,
Yeah.
which, my knowledge, is the first individual female in California to ever do that. But how about those 4 tackles that your coach was telling me about? Was that bigger than a touchdown?
To me, they're both the same, but I love hitting. So I love lighting people up or trying to light people up. I don't know.
That's awesome.
It's the same to me.
Hey,
But-
before we get out of here, obviously it's great, some of the accomplishments you're having this year, but the team is 5-0, it's undefeated. That's got to make this whole year special for you.
Yes, it has, and I'm helping my brothers push through and get that W in Monte Vista. Going to be on the sideline cheering for them and be there, just raising them up, I guess.
Big game on Friday. Thanks, Aaliyah.
Thank you.
Also this Friday, it's Hollister against Monterey. Here are 2 teams who are fighting for their lives in the race for the division title. How do you see this one going down, John?
Well, it's a must-win, I think, for both teams. Obviously, they're both got a league loss right now. If they want to keep pace with Palma, who's undefeated right now, you can't lose another game. I don't think 2 losses wins this league. Monterey got banged up a little bit in that Palma game, but they rebounded really nicely last week with 54 points against Gilroy. And San Benito got banged up a little bit in a 26-6 loss to Salinas. I think that surprised some people. That was in Hollister, and they were actually up 6-0 in the first half, and then Salinas just got on track and ran off 26 unanswered points.
Speaking of surprise, you told me that you saw Hollister run some spread offense in that. When's the last time you saw Hollister
Never.
open things up?
Never. It was in the fourth quarter. They're down by 20. I think they tried something, and they had some success with it, although the last pass was a 98 interception return by Elijah Kirkland from Salinas. So it's work in progress. I think San Benito and Monterey make their living running the ball. My concern for Monterey right now is, as well as they run the ball, I think they've got to pass it just a little bit to keep teams from putting 9 in that box right now. They did that last week against Gilroy. They threw 2 touchdown passes. I think they've got to throw it just a little bit more.
Does the fact that Hollister ran a little bit of the spread give Tom Newton, the coach at Monterey, another little headache to worry about this week?
I think he's got to take a look at it because, as I said, they had some success with it there in the fourth quarter. Now, granted, Salinas was playing more of a prevent defense, so there was openings, 10 yards downfield for those little pop passes, but it was successful up until that last pass.
So Monterey, after losing the lead against Palma late in the game, does that, though, give them the confidence that they can play with this caliber of team?
I think so, and I think that's something that maybe some people weren't sure about. Did Monterey belong in the Gatlin division? It's an enrollment of 1,100 kids. There's only 35 on the roster. They could have won that Palma game. They kind of fell apart in the second half there with a couple of turnovers. Palma got hot. They could be undefeated right now. Instead, they got 1 loss on their belt, and unfortunately, it's a league loss.
And they believe they could be undefeated, I'm assuming.
Sure they do. They took that game hard, obviously. They knew it was a game they could have won. It didn't happen. But now they got a chance to kind of redeem themselves against another quality program.
So objectively, how do you see this going Friday night?
I always like Monterey at home because they play under those portable lights.
Okay.
And you can't see and you can't hear anything. So, obviously Palma won the game, but that was their first loss in 18 games at home under the lights. So, the fact that Hollister's starting quarterback is out, he's been out for a month now, I think that hurts them a little bit. They're a physical team, but I think this is, depending on the health of Monterey, if they get their linebacker back, I think they'll be okay.
Let's talk about the Saturday slate. We've got a couple of intriguing games. Let's talk with a non-conference game, and that's North County against Palma. Traditional rivalry there?
It was. When we go back to the 80s and the 90s, this was one of the biggest rivalries in the area. These teams battled for a CCS South Division II title, and they used to just keep it in the South for the CCS playoffs. They battled for a title back in '89, played to a 13-13 tie. So this rivalry goes way back. Now, it hasn't been a rivalry of late because they're in different leagues now, but I think there's still from the old school, some of the little fire there burning in both these programs.
So there'll be a little emotion on the field on Saturday?
I think so, and the thing is, both these teams are 3-2. Overall, that one loss or one of those 2 losses, both was administered by Seaside, so there's a little comparison there.
Common.
Yeah, and I North County is a surprise to me. I mean, I saw them earlier this year, small numbers, 32 players, a new coach, but they play such good defense. I mean, they held Seaside to 7 points. And Palma's not an offensive juggernaut this year. I mean, if you can stay within distance of Palma, you have a shot. And I think that's what North County has.
So this could be a great confidence builder for North County, even though it's a non-league game.
Yeah, I mean, and again, go back to the Seaside game. They lost the game 7-6. They could have won. They created 4 turnovers in that game. And they played Hillmar earlier this year, and they played them tough in the first half. And for people that don't know, they're the defending Sac Joaquin section champions. So they're battle tested, much like Palma is as well. Playing at North County in that soggy field that's below sea level, I mean, it slows things down a little bit. I think it plays into North County's favor.
Could North County get a CCS bid? If they say, let's say they beat Monte Vista Christian down the line, coming second in the league.
It's hard to say right now because, again, the Pacific of the NBL Pacific Division, I should say, it only gets one automatic.
Right.
So I think 2 teams, additional teams, could come out of that league. I don't know if that'll happen. We're going to get 3 out of the Gavilan and 1 out of the Pacific. You got Seaside, you got Monte Vista, you got North County, and you got Alisal. One of those teams is not going to make the playoffs.
So say North County pulls the upset and beats Palma. Those playoff points will be really important for them.
Big points, being A-League points like that. So this is a big game for North County because for that reason alone, they're going to get points win or lose in this game. But if they were to do I shouldn't say unthinkable, but if they were to beat Palma, I mean, that would be some big points for them.
Moving down the peninsula, Carmel will be hosting Stevenson on Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock. John, surprised by Stevenson's start, 3-1 this season?
I don't think you and I thought we were going to be talking about this game a month ago. Stevenson is playing some good football right now, and you can take a look at their record and say, all right, they beat Greenfield, they beat St. Francis, Harvard, these teams aren't doing well. But the game that stands out to me is that Soledad game. They were down 20-0 in Soledad. They battled back, cut it to 20-14, had a chance to go ahead in that game. That told me this is a confident team that doesn't get razzled at all. They played well, and again, they could have won that game. We saw what Soledad did to Pacific Grove last week. Soledad's a good football team. That being said, I think Carmel is still above everybody else in the MTL right now.
I think what we were surprised at, I wasn't surprised to hear back from you when you took your tour and were scouting all the teams in the county, was that Stevenson has problems with numbers. They start later in the season. Bruce Deeney, a second-year coach, I believe.
Head coach, right.
Second-year head coach. But the fact that he's been able to bring all these things together despite the obstacles and beat the teams that they're supposed to beat. Now here's a team they're not supposed to beat.
Right.
And
I saw some athleticism out there when I was out there to practice, and that was the first thing that caught my eye. Is this team's got some athletes. The numbers are down, but remember, Stevenson won a league title back in 2000 with 19 kids. Granted, they had a kid that ended up going to Stanford, a pretty good football player. But I mean, I like what he's doing out there. He's got these kids believing. I mean, this is Carmel. It's a high-powered offense.
Right.
I mean, Connor Martin is having a sensational season at quarterback. I won't say he's making people forget Devin Pearson, but his numbers are better than what Devin's were as a sophomore, which says something about his ability. They run that spread. They've got Holden Smith in the backfield. It's going to be tough for Stevenson to stop this team. I think they'd have to outscore them, and I don't know if they can do that.
Welcome to the college sports portion of our program. I'm here with Tommy Wright, who covers CSUMB for us, as well as the local community colleges. Tommy, we've been talking for a couple weeks now. It's finally time. Coast Conference play is going to start in football this week. MPC and Hartnell finally getting into conference play. What are going to be some of the keys for them?
I think it's some of the same things they've been trying to do all season. MPC is going to be relying on Cole Houston to get things going. I think both teams are going to try and have to get started well in Coast Conference play, try and get some wins. For Hartnell, they're going to be facing Gavilan, who went 0-10 last year. They've only won 2 games in the last 25 games. So they're going to try and get started quick. Hopefully, if they can get Cole Houston going, then they can open things up for their running game. Nicholas Alacarn and Derek Carlisle try and diversify their offense a little bit. It's been a little bit one-sided with more of a passing than a running game so far.
And what about Hartnell? Who do they open up with?
Hartnell will be opening up with West Valley. They're off to 1-4 start. Hartnell actually has, despite having a losing record, they have the best record in their non-conference play so far with 2 wins. And expect DeAndre Mann to have a big game. West Valley's given up 115 rushing yards per game. DeAndre Mann's averaging 127 yards per game, so I'd expect him to have a pretty big game. Hartnell's going to have their defense step up a little more. They've shown some signs of having really good defense, but it's going to have to live up to their expectations. They do have the best defense in the Coast Conference. They're only allowing about 28 points a game or so, but that's going to have to get a little bit better if they want to win this thing.
Gotcha. So we've got, it's a 6-team conference in the Coast Conference, as well as the teams we talked about. Also in there is San Jose City College, which is, well, back in the day, they used to be a real power down there. And we have Cabrillo College, of course, in Aptos. So they've got a shortened season with just 6 teams in the league, so it's very important that they not have a hiccup along the way. Right?
Definitely, one loss could end up being the difference as they get down the line. It's probably going to be a really tight conference. All the teams are pretty close together, it seems, talent-wise. But it does appear that Hartnell would be the favorite on paper, at least at this point. So we'll see if they're able to translate that on the field.
Let's turn to CSUMB. The volleyball team had lost 4 straight, and you tell me that this weekend it might have been the turning point for them.
Yeah, definitely. It seems like they're starting to get a full team effort. Julia Ashen had really been carrying the team so far on her back, the North Salinas alum, of course. But they're starting to get some more production from some of the other players. Lacey Ventura, one of Ashen's rivals from Salinas, she's been really getting things together, bringing together a really good all-around game. Then another person, Janae Johnson, she's a freshman. She's really started to turn her game up. I think there's a little bit of a difference in the translation of the game from the high school level to the college level, and particularly for her, I saw her play at Bradshaw Christian in the Sac Joaquin section playoffs last year.
Oh, really?
And so that's a smaller school in Division 5, so it's a pretty big jump up from that lower level of high school to college, but I think she's really starting to get things together, and she had 11 kills and 7 blocks in their last game.
Wow. So it was probably a really eye-opener for her to get started here, and she's just catching up now, do you think?
Yeah, I think so, and it seems like the team's really melding together at this point. They're getting production from most all the different positions now.
Turning to CSUMB women's soccer, big victory this weekend by the Otters, snapping a 3-game losing streak by beating Chico State 1-0. And you say this is even more significant than just breaking the 3-game losing streak.
Yeah, that's right. This is huge for the Otters. This is the first time they've ever swept Chico State in a season, and it marks their 6th overall win and their 4th CCAA win, which are both highs for this team since they moved up to NCAA.
Okay. And they're playing to a 500 record right now, or just slightly above.
Just above.
Correct.
Overall.
And that was kind of their goal going into the season, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think they'd be happy if they can end up with the winning record. I think they have about 6 games left, so if they could try and win half those, I think they'd be pretty happy with how their season ends up. It's a developing program, but I think they're where they want to be.
Speaking of developing programs, the men's program is struggling right now. They came off a victory on September 30th, I believe you told me, but haven't been able to pick up a victory since. What's going on out there with the men?
They just can't score. They got to be really disappointed with how this season's went. I think they had higher expectations, but they just haven't. Part of it's they haven't gotten the bounces, and you got to figure that after a while, when you're not scoring, it's just got to weigh on you to not be able to get the ball in the net. Out of their they're 1-9 this year. Out of their 9 losses, 6 have been shutouts. So they're really struggling to get goals.
Get the ball in the net.
Yeah.
Okay. One last note on college sports, and that is we have word that MPC Volleyball has compiled a 10-2 record. We don't know much about them, but we're going to be investigating them this week, see what's happening out there for the Lobos. That's it for Prep Nation this week. I'm Dave Kellogg, and we'll see you next week.